So this is one of the pages that I have made for the illustrated ebook. First of all, the resolution that I chose for this ebook was I was actually targeting an iPad in landscape format. I'm going to talk about the resolution right now. The animations and the actions that I came up with was actually based on the animation that I made for the book. And then, as I said, I decided to create this ebook, so I already had the animations and the layerings of each single page of this book. As you can see, I have 1, 2, 3 animated pieces. This white ghost, this black ghost, and also that cat there. And they are also interactive, so they are responding to the touchdown on the iPad or clicking the mouse in the computer. All right. So I just wanted to show you the final result, so we can, when we go back and prepare all of these layers inside Photoshop and After Effects, we can understand why we are doing it. So this is the final result of this page. Again, if I click on each one of these, as you can see, they will start moving or animating. Okay. So I'm clicking on this white ghost. As you can see, it will go down, and an animation on it, it will be triggered. And same as this monster here. If I click on the body of the monster, you can see that the arms will come up, and then after a while they will go back. All right. So this is the final result, and let's see how I came up with the layering and the animation part, and also how I decided to export each one of these sequences, or the background, or the monster itself. All right. So let's open up the Photoshop file and see what we have in Photoshop. This is the actual file. This is the actual image that I had. It's actually much wider, but I just cropped it in this aspect ratio, and eventually I have to actually try to fit it into the single page that I have in PubCoder. So whenever you open up PubCoder, it will ask you what is your target device. And as I said, you have a couple options that you can choose from. And the main one is the one that we actually are going to work the most in this class is the iPad resolution. And as you can see, the resolution for iPad is 1024 by 768. And you can choose whether you want to be in landscape mode or portrait mode. Okay. These numbers are actually the numbers that you have to memorize, because when you are working in Photoshop or in After Effects, if you, for example, are having a 3D scene and you want to render it out, you have to make sure that you are able to fit it into this resolution. Because if you render out your sequence or your animation or your 3D stuff larger than this, it means that you are actually making something which is big, and when you try to fit it into your screen resolution, which is 1024, you are actually scaling them down, but the data is there. So you are wasting some of your file size by data that is not going to be shown. So it's a good practice to just memorize these two numbers. So whenever you want to render out your files, you are always saving some file size in terms of your sequences or your images or renders. All right. So for this book, as I said, I decided to make it in landscape mode because all my images were too wide, and I wanted to make sure that I can fit the more information into one single page. And I will hit next. It will ask me to save it or give it a name and save it as a new file. I'm going to skip this and just open up a file that I previously created. So I'm going to close this and open up the page that I have created already. All right, so again, 1024 by 768 is the resolution that we want to work with. So I'm going to delete all of these, and I'm going to start from scratch. Or I can just switch to another empty page, and I can just create them from scratch. So let's go to Photoshop and see what we have here. So my first step was to start layering my stuff, layering my elements. As I said, it was this image that I had was just one single illustration on paper, and the artist has scanned them as one single image. So in order to be able to animate every single element of this page, I had to start layering them, or extract the layers from the background. So I spent some time to take out the cat, for example, and then build the background underneath it. So when I move the cat, I can actually see the background underneath it. So originally the cat was here, and if I was cutting it out, I would end up having a hole here in the background. So I had to spend some time to fill up the holes with some tools in Photoshop. All right. So this is the cat. This is the white ghost. If I turn off the background, you can see that it's actually taken out of the background without any other extra element. I have also the black ghost here. So again, if I turn off the background, you can see that the black ghost is actually sitting on its own without having any background. And the same as the monster itself, or the character. So I have all of these, and just to make sure that I'm not wasting my file size, I have to make sure that my resolution here is fitting to the resolution that I want to work with inside PubCoder. Because I know that the resolution is 1024 by 768, I can either crop this image to fit to that resolution or create a new file with that resolution. So 1024 by 768. Hit OK, and then click and drag all of these layers into that file. All right. And as you can see, because my background is a little bit wide, I'm not able to fit all of the background inside it. For this specific page, I don't care about it because I don't have any important element in the background that I want to show. There's nothing here that I wanted to focus on. So I just decided to choose this portion of the background for this single page. If you want to have enough control, or if you want to move the background inside your project, inside PubCoder, for example, you can keep the width of the background as a separate file, so you can actually move it inside PubCoder if you want. But for this specific page, I decided to just have a fixed background. All right. So because I want to see also this sign here, I will just drag it over so I can see the sign. And then I will start building up my scene using all of the elements that I have here. So I will put the cat over here. Somewhere here. The white ghost here. Somewhere here. All right. So I'm happy with this result. It's time to save it as a Photoshop file. And then I want to do the animation inside After Effects. All right. So because it was a 2D page, I decided to do all the animations inside After Effects. It depends on your project. So let's go to After Effects, and I've already imported the PSD file inside After Effects. You can see that I'm having all the layers inside After Effects, so everything is separated and I can start animating them. For these elements that I have here, I decided to use one of the effects inside After Effects. If you want, I can just show you in the lab how you can use them, but this is the result of them. So if I turn on the animations here and turn off the ones that are just there as a backup, you can see what is the final look of these animations. So the first couple frames is just the animation part for the white ghost, or the second part of it. The first part is the animation for the cat, right? And the third part is the animation on the black ghost here on the sign. And I have these arms here that I can start animating right now. So let's do that. I'm going to animate the arms of the character here after the animation on the ghost is done. I'm trying to show you something, how you can be smart in terms of exporting your animation. So bear with me for a while. So I'm going to set a keyframe on the rotation of the arm. And rotating it up. Okay. I'll just focus on the right arm for now. I will just ignore the left arm. All right. So I'm done with the animation. Now it's time to bring all of these into PubCoder and then start doing or adding the interactivity to all of these. All right. So there's something that you should always be aware of and you should be cautious about. When you are exporting your files, what format you should choose, how you can save some file size when you are choosing the file format that you want to use for exporting, and how you should approach the file format in terms of the transparency again. So for these, you might say that I can just export all of these as a sequence, as a JPEG sequence, and then just bring them into PubCoder. So let's do that. I'm going to add the whole composition to render queue and then export it as a JPEG sequence. I'm going to choose a compression for that, just to save some file size. And I'm going to export it into the same folder. And as you can see, the first 15 frames are related to the cat. So I'm just going through the frames, right? And then the next 15 frames are related to the white ghost here, and so on. And let's look at the file sizes here. So for each one of these renders, I'm having a file size of something around 600, right? So if I multiply that by 90 frames that I have for all the animations, I will end up having so around 600 kilobytes multiplied by 90 frames. 54 megabytes for just one single page, right? Which you might say it's okay, but I mean, if you have, for example, 20 pages, you will end up having a gigabyte or something close to that for the whole, which is a huge file size. So we should come up with another idea. We should come up with a method of having all of these animations, but yet saving some file size. And I'm also not talking about how tied you are into these animations when you bring them into a PubCoder. So what's your solution for keeping these animations and yet having the file size that is much less than this?
You could just render out each character.
Each character as a separate, yeah, exactly. So because, for example, look at the first 15 frames here. I'm having 15 frames that are exactly like each other, except that this cat is actually animated. So I'm saving some information which is not useful at all, which I don't need at all. So it's a good idea to save your background. Now that you are having the layers separated, it's a good idea to just save your background as one single image, and then save your animations as separate sequences. This way you are going to, for example, save a sequence for just a cat with a very small file size or file resolution. And you will end up having a lot less information when you want to export or import them into PubCoder. And that's why I created these compositions inside After Effects for each one of these animations. So if I want to start exporting the whole animation, I can actually turn off the animated pieces here, just render out or save my background as one single JPEG image, and then go inside these composition and render out each one of these animations as a separate sequence. Okay? I have done that already, and I can show you what is the difference here. So this is my background. This is the background that I'm using without all those elements. As you can see, I'm having 200 kilobytes. And the sequences for the animations are here. So for example, for the black ghost, you can see that for just this one, I'm having 30 kilobytes of data multiplied by 15 you can just have 450 kilobytes of data for just this animation. I have 3 of them. It's going to be something around 2 megabytes of data for all of the animations, plus the background file size. At most, I will end up having 3 megabytes of this whole animation, right? The only thing that you should consider is that when you want to decide what format you have to export your file, you should be careful about the compression and also the alpha channel, or transparency information of your animation file. So if I want to export my background, I will surely choose JPEG format because I just want to export this layer and I want to put it on the lowest layer in my final page. I don't care about its transparency because there is no transparency information in this. And I want to be able to compress it in a way that I can actually save some file size. So I will choose JPEG file format because I have enough control over its compression. I can actually lower the compression to get a smaller file size, right? So this is for the background. For the foreground, or for the animated objects, you should be careful. You should choose the file format more wisely. So for example, for this cat, or for this white ghost here, you can see that I need to maintain this transparency. So again, you keep asking me what format I should choose when I'm trying to export my file. This is the answer. If you are having transparency information, if you are having opacity on your layers, you have to make sure that you are saving your files as a format that will respect transparency. And the format that respects the transparency is PNG format, right? Whenever you are having transparency information in the layers or the elements, make sure that you are exporting your sequence as a PNG format. There is a downside with PNG formats, and that's, I mean, it's not downside, but you don't have control over its compression, so you cannot lower the file size when you are exporting them. It will just maintain all the information. You cannot compress. However, you are having this benefit of having transparency information in your sequences. Okay? So again, there's a trade-off between the resolution, the quality, and the transparency. Either you should choose the JPEG format if you want to save some file size and you don't have any transparency information, or you should choose PNG format when you are exporting a layer that has transparency to it. So as I said, I've exported all of these and I've put them inside separate folders. There's another thing that I wanted to mention here. When you are working on a large project and you're having different file formats, you should make sure that you are managing your files cleanly and wisely. So for example, for this book, I had 10 pages. And for each one of them, I wanted to work in After Effects. I wanted to work in PubCoder. I wanted to work in maybe Maya. And I wanted to be able to find my files easily, be able to export them in a place that I can find them easily. I wanted to create some sequence folders for each one of these pages, some animations. So if I just was putting all of my stuff, all of my files into one single folder, immediately after 1 hour of working, you will be lost in your files. Because you're dealing with different file formats, different project folders, and also different sequences or layers of your elements. So this is one method that I came up with because I knew that I wanted to work in Photoshop, so I created one Photoshop file. I've created a folder for my PNG files or my layers, for example, and I created another folder for the animated pieces of each single page. And then I had an After Effects file or folder that I was doing all the animations, all the exporting and everything inside After Effects. So I'm going to ask you to do something like this. I mean, you come up with a rule for yourself and just follow that rule. As long as you're not lost in your project, I'm fine with that. Just come up with a smart method of managing your files. So going back to this single page, I'm going to bring all of the elements of this page 17 into PubCoder. So let's just go over all of these renders that I have so we can understand what we have here, and then we can just switch to PubCoder. So I'm having one single image for the animated pieces. I'm having the character, the body of the character. I'm having the arm of the character. and both arms and the background. So I'm going to open up PubCoder and I'm going to import all of these inside PubCoder. All right. So if you remember, this was the workspace in PubCoder. We are having the library here, the assets that we can import and play with inside PubCoder. This is just a library inside After Effects or your outliner inside Maya. And we want to import our stuff into the project. So I will click here and I will start importing images from disk. All right, so let's go to the PNGs folder and just select the files that I want to import. I'm going to import the background and I'm going to import the character and the ghosts and the cat. All right, so I'm going to start building up the page again. I have all my assets here. As soon as I do that, I can switch to the layers and I can see what elements I have is in this single page here. So this layers tab is actually just specifically for that single page. So whatever element you include inside this page, you can see them inside this layers tab. As you can see, I'm having all the assets here and I cannot see them here because I haven't dragged them over the page here. All right. So when I click on this element here, I can see that. I know that the resolution of this image is actually something else. It's not that small. It's supposed to be 1024 by 768, and it's not showing up here. The reason why here is that by default, PubCoder is actually zooming or scaling down your elements sometimes. In order to fix that, any element that you choose, you can go to the properties of that single element by going to this selection tab here on the right side, and you can see all the properties of that single element that you're selecting. So depending on the element that you select in PubCoder, you can see its properties. Here's the width and height that are for this element, and I can just type in the resolutions that I know that the element has. So it's 1024 by 768. And as you can see, the scale here is now set back to 1. And now I can put it on top of my frame here, which is the page of the resolution of my page here. All right. And as you can see, I can play with the position of the element here, and it will count from this top left corner of the page. So any pixel value that you put here, you're actually moving your elements from this top left corner. Okay, so you can manually type in some numbers here. All right, so I dragged the background here, and now it's time to bring over all of those single elements. I'm gonna start with the character and bring it over. And I have to make sure that I'm not replacing that with my background. All right. And for each one of these, I have to make sure that I have the exact number for the pixels, again, for the width and height. So in order to check that, I can just go to Photoshop maybe, or select the images here, and then find their resolutions, and then just match them to the resolution in the PubCoder. So this body of the character is actually 1030 by 510. It will change it to 1. If I change the scale, however, it will just scale it up, and it will not scale up the frame of it, so it will actually crop it. That's why I'm typing the numbers here. Okay. $332, $491. And usually I can just multiply these by 2. So it's 304.88. Okay. and then I will bring over those animated elements. They're not animated yet, so I'm not going to spend time on fixing the resolution because I want to import the animated sequence over. So I just placed them as a placeholder here. And I'm going to show you how you can import an animation sequence inside PubCoder. So so far we were able to import the images or still images inside this page. Now it's time to import the animation sequence. And just to show you, I have all of these sequences for each one of these in a PNG format, right? So in PubCoder, the type of the elements, the type of the objects that you can import or you can use for each single page is actually here. These are the different types of the elements that you can use for each single page. I'm not going to talk about the widgets or the controllers yet. I'm just going to focus on these elements that you can use. So the one that we already used is the image element that you can actually drag and drop it over here. And you can assign an image to it by selecting that and then going to its properties and then selecting an image from your assets library or from your hard drive. Or you can just import them into your asset list and then drag them over to your page. This is another method. The other type of object is the text. You can have audio, video, you can have animation sequence, or you can have buttons and some simple vector images that you can just create within PubCoder. A rectangular shape or an ellipse shape. Okay? So I want to focus on these animations. So for importing these animations, I'm going to need to bring over one of these animation objects. And let's start with this black ghost here on the sign here on the right side. So first I need to find what's the resolution of this black ghost. As you can see, I'm having a size of 200 by 160, so I'm going to match the resolution to this animation object here, 200 by 160. Okay. And just like any other element that we had, we can select the element and we can change its properties. So I'm going to select the animation and go to its properties and edit the list of all the sequences that I can have for this animation. So if I click on this edit list, you can see that right now it's empty. I can start importing images to this animation element. I can import from my asset list if I've already imported them, or I can just simply add or import them from my disk. So this is the black ghost. I can select all of them and hit open. It will import them into my assets list, and also if I want to check my animation, I can see that the animation is here. If I hit play, you can see that it's playing. So it's going through all of these sequences. And then I can click and drag it over here. I can go to the layers tab, get rid of this image here. I can just delete it, or I can go to my assets list and just delete it permanently from my project. All right. So the animation sequences here. I have a couple more properties for animation objects. One of them is how many frames per second you want to have for this animation. Depends on the animation that you have. I know that this animation is made in 24 frames per second, so I will type in 24 frames per second for that. I can also decide whether I want to have a repeat for this animation when I activate it or not. Right now by default there is a repeat of 1, which means that it will just run the animation once. If I want, I can say that I want to loop it for 3 times or 10 times, or you can put 0 and it will just keep looping. All right, it says that 0 stands for forever. So for this example, I'm gonna put maybe 2 for the loops. You can decide whether you want to go back to your first frame or you want to stay on the last frame when the animation is done. For this, because this animation is loopable, it doesn't matter. And you can change the opacity, and you want to, for example, have it as hidden for its initial state and you want to make it visible later on, you can do that here. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for the cat. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to create another animation element. I want to match the resolution to the resolution of the cat. So it's 140 by 90. And I'm going to edit the list by clicking on Edit List and import the sequence for the cat. It's working. And 24 frames per second. And then I can click and drag it over there. One more, this is the white ghost, so I'm going to create another animation. 480 by 320. Layers, this is my animation 3. I can just move it over and get rid of the other one. So I already have all the animations here. I can just move this over too. So let's link all of these together. So when I move one of them, it will move all of them together, just like Photoshop. You can link some layers together. All right. Now it's time to test our page. Before doing that, I'm going to rename these layers so later on I can actually refer to them. So I'm going to name this background as background. This one is the character body, character right hand, character left hand, black ghost. You will see why it's useful to name your objects. Cat and white ghost. All right. So I'm going to test this page. There's a button here that you can start previewing your page or your whole project. For now, we will just focus on one of these pages. So I'm going to hit this preview, and by default, it will just preview your current active page. So as you can see, everything is loaded. All of the elements are here, though the animations are actually not working. That's because by default, the animations are there unless you just tell them you want to play the animation. So it's time to create all those actions and events. Going back to these animations, I want to have the events and the actions on these animation sequences. So as you saw, by default, these animations are not playing. So I want to actually make them play when I load the page. So let's do that. I'm going to create an action on this black ghost, and I want to have the event or the trigger, the load of this element. So when the page is loaded, when the element is loaded, I want to play the animation. So in order to create all those interactivities, you can see that there is a tab here which is called interactivity. For any single selected object, you can have an interactivity or interactive element or action applied to that for any single element. So for example, for this one, as you can see, I'm having a list of all of those events or triggers that I can use. And then when I use them, when I choose them, I can start adding actions to them. So I'm saying that I want to have an action on touch down of this element. Or I want to have an action on load of this element, right? So whenever this element is loaded, I want to create an action. And the action for this animation, I want to choose from this list, play animation. Okay? As you can see, I'm having a lot of lists here for the events. and a list of all these actions, pre-made actions that are ready for use for that specific element. All right. So for this one, I chose play animation. And when I click on this play animation, you can see that the properties of this action will show up here. So depending on the action that you define or apply to this element, you can see different different properties for that specific action. For play animation, I'm only having one properties, which is what element you want to start the play animation on, right? And by default, you can see that it says self, which means that I want to play the animation, which is the self element, the element itself, right? So let's test it. The page is loaded, the animation is played, and it stops. Okay? So let's create another event for example, this white ghost here. This time I'm going to apply the action to the touchdown event of this element. So I will select the object, select the touchdown event, add an action, play animation. What element? Itself. So the target here is self. And then I hit preview. This one, the action is on load. This one is on touchdown. So if I click on it, you can see that the animation will start. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for this cat, and then I'm going to introduce some new actions that we can have inside PubCoder. So I'm going to create another action for the event of touchdown for this cat, which is again play animation. So again, if I test it, I can see that the action is supposed to work actually, so it's working. This one is by load, and this one is by touchdown again, and we are all set. So it's time to animate the arms for this character. If I want to follow the same rule for the arms, I'm supposed to go back into After Effects, animate the arms, and then render it out as a sequence of PNG files, and then bring it back into PubCoder, and then trigger the animation, right? So let's look at the file size here for the character. The character itself, the layers for the character itself, if I combine all of these together, you can see that I will end up having something around 600 kilobytes, which is not that high, but imagine having a sequence of animated elements for the character, and for example having 15 frames or 20 frames for the arms of the character, and I want to render it out just for the rotation of the arm. I will end up having something around maybe a couple megabytes for the animation for the character. All right. So this is the cool part. If you are not going to deform your elements, if you are not going to add an effect to your elements inside PubCoder, PubCoder will give you the option of animating your objects inside the PubCoder. You can just do all the animations within PubCoder. And the animations are just the simple ones. I mean, you can move an object, you can rotate an object within PubCoder without going back to After Effects or Maya and then start animating them. So, for example, for this arm, I want to have the event to be on the body of the character, and I want to rotate the arm when I click on the body of the character. So I'm going to select the body. And then I'm going to put an action on the touchdown event of the body. And this time I'm going to choose rotate object. Okay. However, this time, because I want to have the rotation to happen on the right arm of the character, I have to change the target this time. So if I click on the self, you can see that it will show me the list of all the objects inside this single page, not all the project. It will show me all the objects inside this page, so I can choose from. And that's why I said it's better to name your elements, because now you can just choose them by their names. I mean, it's very hard to see the objects, so it's easier to find them or just search them maybe by their names. So I know that I want to animate the character right hand, all right? And I can define how many degrees I want to animate it or rotate it. So I will start typing 45 degrees, for example. And as you can see, I'm having a couple issues here. One of them is that it's in the wrong direction. So I will type in negative 45. Okay, and now the issue here is that the pivot point of this rotation is by default set to the center of the element. Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to change the pivot point. Exactly. Changing the pivot point inside PubCoder is not that easy. It's not just like Maya or After Effects by just simply selecting the pivot point and moving it over. You have a couple options here, which is actually here. This is the origin of the rotation. So you can choose from all of these predefined options. You can choose from top left, top right, top center, and all of these. And I'm sure that none of these will work on this specific element here because it's not either in the middle of, exactly in the middle of this top part, or it's not exactly in the right corner or left corner. So there's another option that I can choose, which is the custom pivot point. I can choose that. And it will give me these two numbers that I can actually play with. And it's based on this left top corner again of the element. So when it says 50%, it's saying that the origin x of this element is set to 50% of its width and 50% of its length. So I can start playing with these numbers and find the exact position that I want to have the pivot point. As you can see right now, it's here. So I can start increasing that, maybe something close to 50. And then I can change this to something close to 10%. And as you can see, I'm eventually setting this pivot point to the place that I want. So maybe 55 and 5%, 50. Okay. So the animation is made. It's happening on the touchdown of the main body of the character. There is this place that I can change the duration of this rotation. Making animations inside PubCoder is not that easy. You don't have those animation curves just like After Effects or Maya. But it is giving you enough options to play with the speed of the animation or the rotation or the movement of your elements when you're having these animations, these actions applied to them. So you can still get a good result by just playing with all of these options that you have inside PubCoder, and it's worth it because you are saving a lot of file size at the end. So if you can do your animations inside PubCoder, it's best to do that inside there and not go back and render out a sequence of your elements animated, especially for such simple animations. If it's movement or rotation, you can just do them simply inside PubCoder. So I'm going to change this to be slower, maybe happening within 1 second. And then I'm going to test it. So the event is applied to the character body. So any place on the body of the character, if I click, I will trigger that animation. So I will reload the page. I will click on the character body. As you can see, the animation is happening. But I want to have it go back to its original position after a while. So let's add another action to the action list here. So I'm back to the character body. These are the actions that I'm having on the touchdown. As you can see, there's a number here saying that there is one action on the touchdown of this element. So I can add another rotation to character right hand, or I can copy and paste this action, okay, and change this number to positive 45. So first I'm rotating this in negative direction by 45 degrees, and then when I'm done, I'm rotating it back to its original position by rotating it in positive direction by 45 degrees. I can change the speed of this coming back to something else just for practice, and then I can test it. Click, go up and come down. And as you can see, the speed of the going up is a little bit slower just because I'm having a duration of 1 second for that. It's nice, but it's also nice if I can have a hold between these two actions, between these two rotations. So I'm going to add a hold between them. I'm going to add another action which is called wait, and I can define how many seconds I want to have this wait to happen. So I will put, for example, 2 seconds, and then I will test it. Click. There's a problem here. The hold that I added here, it's happening after the rotation, right? So I have to have this wait in between these two rotations. I want to have it rotated up, wait for 2 seconds, rotate back. So this is how I actually reorder these actions. I can simply just click and drag each one of these actions up and down. It's that simple. This is the beauty of these action lists here. You can just simply click and drag them to reorder them. So let's test it now. Up, 2 seconds, down. Let's do this. Let's actually have the cat to move over when we click on it. So we already have this action applied to the cat, which is triggering the animation. It will play the animation for us. I'm clicking on it, it will play the animation. Now we have all of these available options for the actions. Let's also add the movement for the cat. So I'm going to move it up. And then I'm going to have the action to move the cat to the left side of the frame when I click on it. So it will not only play the animation, but also it will move the cat over to the left side. So what was the trigger for the cat? It was the cat itself. So I'm having the touchdown action event on the cat. I'm having the play animation action applied to it. I'm going to add another action, which is move. I want to move itself. So the target here is going to be itself. And I have 2 modes for the move action. One of them is the fixed position. If you know exactly where you want to have the cat to go, you can type in the numbers here. So right now the cat is actually sitting in 345, 344, 84, or 84 in X and Y directions, right? If I want to move it over in this direction, I can just simply move it over and see what is the coordinates of this new position for the cat. I guess because I have selected the action here, it's actually moving down. So I want to see where I want to have the cat to move over. So I'm going to move it over, and I can see that these are the new numbers for that. So I can use these fixed numbers for the move action. So it's negative 136 and 68, if you can memorize that. So I'm going to add the move action, fixed position, negative 1, okay, thank you, and 68 was it?
It's negative 136.
Oh yeah,
68.
negative 136. Okay, thank you. And again, we have a duration for that. It's going to happen in 0.5 seconds. I'm going to preview that. Click, and it's done, right? So I'm clicking on it. It will play the animation, and then it will move the cat. So click, play the animation, move the cat. So let's go back to these 2 actions here. As you can see, I'm having the play animation action first, and then the move object after that. So I want to have these 2 actions to play at the same time. There's another option here in the actions list that you can use that will actually make a couple actions happen at the same time. So I can click and drag and attach it to this action on top of it. Click and drag and attach. Right now you can see that there is no gap between these 2 actions, which means that these 2 actions are happening at the same time. If I'm not happy with that, I can just click and detach them. As you can see, I'm having by default this gap here, which means that again these actions are happening after each other. If I attach them together, I'm actually having these 2 actions to happen at the same time. So now let's test it. Click, the shake and the movement are happening at the same time. Okay? We cannot see the shake anymore because it's moving too, but it's happening. So now that it's working, let's have a hold here, and then after a while we want to have the cat to come back, because if you just remove it from the page we cannot see it anymore. So I'm going to have another wait here. Let's wait for 1 second, and then I'm going to move the object back, and this time I'm going to choose from the list the initial position of that element. Okay, so for the moved action I have a couple options. One of them is moving it to a fixed position. The other option that I have is moving it into its initial position. So I can choose that. Click, wait, come back to its original position. Okay, click, original position. So this is the next page that I wanted to show you. I'm having a couple elements here that are interactive, and I'm having these arrows just to show that these elements are actually animated. So if I click on any of these leaves, you can see that they will fall down, right? If I click on the ghost here, this monster here, it will bring up the eyes of the monster. If I release my mouse button, right now I'm just holding the mouse. If I release it, it will make it disappear. And I'm having another animation on these two characters. So when I click on them, they will shake. I'm also having some sound assigned to them. So this is one for this one. This is another for this one. Okay. So this animation here is just like the same thing that we had for the other page. I just exported the sequence for the animation for these two characters. If I open up the folder for that, you can see that I'm having a sequence folder for the character shake. Then I'm having all the backgrounds and all of those elements or the leaves that I have in the scene. So these leaves are actually separated, and I just brought them into this page. I'm just going to focus on the action that I have, or the element that I have for the eyes of the monster here. So if I open up the layers of this page, you can see that I'm having all of these leaves, I'm having the text, and then I'm having the eyes for the monster. So originally you might say that I can animate the opacity of the eyes of the monster inside After Effects. So this is the composition inside After Effects. As you can see, I'm having an animation on the eyes of the monster playing with their opacity. Okay, and if I export that, I will end up having a sequence for that, which is right here. These are the animation sequence for the eyes, 30 frames. And even though they are small, they are just 3 kilobytes. And multiplied by 30, I will end up having 90 kilobytes for that. But I know that I can do something else inside PubCoder without importing all of these sequences inside PubCoder. Because the animation on the eyes is just fading them in and out, I can simply do that inside PubCoder by having just one of the layers, one of the files that is the eye in full opacity. Bring it over here and then fade it in and fade it out using a trigger that I have on the character. So let's bring up the button that I have for that. Here's the button. And then I'm having these actions on touchdown of this button here. As you can see, I chose the hide action. I'm having an action called hide, right? And just like any other action that we had, we can choose the object that we want to hide. So I can choose the object from the list, and I can define the duration of this fading. I can show an object, and I can again define the duration of that. So this hide is actually for this arrow here. The show object is happening within 0.7 seconds, and then I'm having the play audio, which will play the audio that I have in the page. I'm not going to show that right now. So this is the touchdown action, And I want to have another action for touch up. So when I release my mouse or when I release my touchdown, I want to have the object to be hidden. So it's hide which object? The eyes through 0.7 seconds. Okay. So now if I click on this object, click on this button, it will show the eyes and it will hide them. So practically I'm animating the opacity of this element within PubCoder without having the need of importing the sequence, the whole sequence inside PubCoder. So I'm saving another 87 kilobytes of data by just having one of these images inside PubCoder.